Have y'all noticed how confusing and contradicting pretty much everything is these days? At this point, I'm convinced that there is a battle for our minds. And I think there's really something to that. I think this truly is a battle for our minds, but it makes me wonder, what is it about our minds that makes them so valuable? I mean, think about the platforms we use, social media, the mainstream media, pretty much anything on the internet. There's always going to be some sort of monetary incentive to keep our attention on these platforms, but I think it goes much deeper than that. I think one of the big reasons that this is happening is that it actually is designed to keep us confused, to keep us divided, and to keep us in a state of just not knowing which direction to go. That way we kind of just give up. We just throw in the towel, we throw our hands up, and we're like, you know what? It's not even worth pursuing this any further. It's not worth looking into this myself. It's not worth researching. It's not worth my time, because everything contradicts itself. Everything is too confusing, and I don't have the time to mess with it, so there's no point. And I really do think that is kind of what is happening. I mean, think about all the stuff that we're being pummeled with in our daily lives, and not just the stuff that is being pushed to us, but the stuff that we research ourselves. It doesn't matter what the topic is. It could be anything. It could be space. It could be food and nutrition. It could be exercising, relationships, you name it. Anything. It doesn't matter what it is. There is an argument to be made for both sides of the coin, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good to have an argument for both sides, but when both sides are so compelling, and there is so much research and scientific data to back up both sides, and we're constantly being told that this side is right, that side's wrong, or vice versa, it can be very hard to know which way is up, to know what is right. And I truly do believe it's that way by design. I believe it is designed to keep us confused, to keep us feeling lost and hopeless, because when you have that kind of information and nothing makes sense, nothing adds up, and you can't put two and two together, you do just give up. And if you think about the way this stuff is structured, the way it's designed, it is very polarizing. The argument that's made on both sides is very profound, and in a lot of cases, it's very convincing. And it's also very common for the information to be presented to us in a very polarizing way. Sometimes we'll see very influential people that are pushing that information out, and sometimes their argument will be so convincing that we have no choice than to believe them. But then there'll be somebody else that comes out that is also influential, that will be pushing the opposite side, and their argument is also, again, very compelling, and it will be almost impossible not to believe them. So then, which side do you believe? It can be very hard to know, and that in itself creates division between people, because people latch on to one side or the other, and then they form their identity around that, and they start to establish these very deeply held ideologies and these beliefs around these ideas that are presented to us. And in a lot of cases, these are inceptions. These are seeds that are planted into our minds, and that sometimes means that they're not necessarily our thoughts or our ideas, but we latch onto them as if that were the case, because again, these things are so convincing and so compelling, and maybe these things resonate with us because of some life experience. And that is enough for us to adopt these ideas as our own and allow these things to divide us. And division naturally creates fear. It creates a negative emotional response. And you'll see that in a lot of these messages that are being pushed out to us, and a lot of these ideologies that we kind of form, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of negative messaging within these things. And I also believe this is by design, because if you think about fear and you think about negative emotion, these things have a very profound impact on the way we live our lives. And in a lot of ways, they can dictate and control the things that we do, the choices that we make. Because when your emotions are kept very, very high and they're never given a chance to come down, then it makes it very hard to think straight. You can't really think rationally, because when fear takes over, it takes that rational thought away. Essentially, fear triggers the lizard part of your brain, and that's the natural instinct part. It overrides logic, and it taps into that fight or flight instinct. And when you're constantly stuck in that fight or flight response, it can be very hard to tap into the logical part of your brain and make rational decisions. And I think this is also by design, because if you think about that, that makes people very easy to control, because when your emotions take over, you lose control. And then naturally, you want to cling to the thing that makes you feel the most comfortable, the thing that takes away that negative response and that fear and all those emotions that you're feeling. And if you think about the information that we're presented with and a lot of the stuff that we see in our daily lives, that is kind of how the information is structured. There's stuff that is designed to elicit an emotional response. A lot of times it's fear-driven or it's very negative. But then simultaneously, there will also be another side that is being pushed out to us, and that is one that gives us a small bit of hope, something that helps us maintain optimism. And if you really think about this, it's kind of a choreographed dance that they're playing with our emotions. They give us a little bit here and there, but they're also slowly and quietly chiseling away at us. Not so much that we feel forced and backed into a corner, but enough that we take notice. And it's because of that very delicate balance that we don't just erupt into a state of panic and lash out in outrage as a collective society. So it keeps us suppressed, it keeps us docile, it keeps us in line. And there are so many examples of this. I mean, let's think about food. Food is a big one because there's a lot of contradicting and conflicting information out there about food. The problem with this is that they allow a lot of these major food manufacturers to lobby for certain types of food. There are also certain people and certain groups that fund a lot of the studies around food, so that makes everything very, very biased. And this is true for all different types of food, the healthy stuff and the junk. But all this information that's out there is very contradicting, and it's very confusing and conflicting. So for the average person that's trying to wade through this information, it can be nearly impossible to know what's right and what's wrong. And that causes a lot of people to give up. They just say, you know what? To heck with it. I'm going to eat whatever the heck I want and not worry about all this stuff, because obviously trying to understand it is nearly impossible. And when that happens, we have a society that is overweight and obese, sick and unhealthy, and that is exactly where we're at right now. And the root cause of that is because of all this stuff that we're talking about here. And that's just one example. There are many, many more. Exercise is another one. Over the last couple of years, there's been a kind of a strange agenda that is pushing against exercising and daily movement and going outside and exposing yourself to the sun and hiking around outdoors. And to me, that is wild, because if you think about all of our existence, we were probably very active because we were actively hunting, we were foraging, we were searching for food, we were building shelter and providing for ourselves and our families and our civilization. But now today we are very sedentary, and we spend over 90% of our time indoors. The amount of time that we're actually outside in the elements and in the sun and moving our bodies is pretty much non-existent. And I think it goes without saying, if you use logic anyway, that has probably fed into the state of our nation and the fact that everybody is so sick and unhealthy right now. But somehow there's this idea that has crept into society that now makes us believe that we're extremists if we exercise and we want to maintain a healthy body composition. And to me, that is absolutely baffling and goes against pretty much all common sense. But on the other side of the coin, there is also another scientific community or community of experts telling us that vitamin D is necessary and we need to go outside as often as possible and move our body and exercise as often as we possibly can. And that is the only way that we're going to maintain proper health and establish a lifestyle that is going to allow us to have longevity. And in most cases, the easiest route means that it's something that has monetary incentive for the people that are pushing these ideas. Because if you think about giving up and taking a quick fix, some sort of pharmaceutical, that is a monetary incentive for the pharmaceutical company to sell us those things. So of course they're going to sell you the idea that anything natural is going to be bad for you, because those things are generally free. They don't cost anything. So for anybody that goes that route, that's a customer lost. But because of all the psychological warfare and the things that we're subjected to, that's the trap that a lot of us fall into. It's a trap that causes us to give up and seek the comfortable route. And this psychological warfare is also true about money. I mean, think about the way that you were raised. Chances are, if you're anything like me and most people out there, you probably didn't receive any kind of formal education around finances. And I believe it's that way by design. That way we continue to fill our role in society and we never get to step outside of that. Because if we don't learn how to improve our financial situation, then we're going to remain cogs in the machine. And that is exactly what they want, because that keeps society going. That is corporate America for you. It's all about having a class of obedient working citizens. But it's not just the fact that we don't receive any kind of formal financial education. It's also the fact that when you start to try to learn this stuff, there is a lot of very confusing and very conflicting information out there. And it can be very hard to know what path you should take. When it comes to investing, there are many different ways that you can invest. There's an almost unlimited amount of things that you can invest in. So that makes it very difficult to know which one to choose. When it comes to jobs and finding a career, that can also be very difficult, because there's always going to be a side that can be argued for or against pretty much any industry that you can dream up. When it comes to business and side hustles, that can also be very confusing because there are a lot of people out there that are saying, start this business, do this side hustle. Doing this one thing is going to allow you to make $1,000 a day. But before you start that, doing this thing over here will allow you to make $10,000 a month. And oh, by the way, don't stop there, because if you do this thing, you can make an additional $300 a day. All this information can be very overwhelming. But on top of all that, then you also have all these experts now that are coming out saying that it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it doesn't matter how much you invest, nobody's safe because AI is coming in and it's going to replace all of us. And all that could be 100% accurate. But that, coupled with not really knowing what's happening and all the other confusing and conflicting information that's out there, it can leave people feeling very lost, hopeless, and fearful, which causes them to give up and stop trying. But the psychological warfare doesn't stop there. This is also bled into relationships. I mean, think about men and women and how they've been pitted against each other. This is something that has occurred because of this seed, again, that has been planted into our minds, this inception, that men and women should not get along and they should actually oppose one another. And it is also due to the way society and family court and all these other things are set up. And this has bred into existence this reality that we're all now trapped in, where a man can't approach a woman on the street for fear of being called a creep and being mocked and berated online. And that is now causing women to be mad at men for not approaching them. But now it's too late because men have given up and they've started to go their own way. And all of this, every single bit of it, stems from psychological warfare, where up is down, black is white, and right is wrong. Nothing makes sense, so we all give up. Why bother? But for every psyop that we're faced with, there has to be a solution. So what is it? I say this every time, and I'm going to keep saying it because I believe it to be 100% true. And that is that I believe the solution to this, just like many of the problems that we're faced with in our daily lives, is very, very simple. And I believe it means just getting back to the basics, getting back to the simpler ways of doing things. For this problem in particular, our disparity and our sense of hopelessness stems from all the confusion. It stems from all the contradicting information and all of these seeds and these ideas that are being planted into our minds. So it makes sense that to overcome these things, we just need to create an environment for ourselves that is not so loud. I have found that it is fundamentally important to drown out all the noise and to spend time alone, spend time in silence to yourself and think about these things. Think about the things that we're being told and use common sense and trust your gut, because the fact of the matter is, each and every one of us, we are blessed with an intuition from birth. It is a very innate sense that a lot of us just kind of drown out. And we drown it out because we're constantly distracted. We no longer even take the time to listen to our intuition. But I've found that it's very important to do that. It's very important not just to listen to your intuition, but to hear what it's telling you, because chances are it's not going to lead us astray. And once we tune into that, that will allow us to form our own conclusions based on our own unique life experience. And that is going to allow us to see the truth. And the truth is that we are all being played like a fiddle. But it's time to get back to independent thought and stop letting this stuff control and dictate the way we live our lives. It's time to stop letting it influence our emotions and crush our spirit. And it's time to stop letting it kill our drive and ambition to do better. Because the fact of the matter is, the way things are going right now, we can all do better.